No one ever tells you about the silence. They write songs about the glittering stars and the majesty of the void, but they never mention the bone-deep quiet that seeps into your soul and hollows you out from the inside. For 10 years, that silence had been my only real companion out here in the graveyard, the sprawling tomb of the corporate war where empires had bled out and left their metal skeletons to rust in the dark. My rig, the stray dog, was as much a ghost as the ships I picked apart. A cobbled-together mess of second-hand parts and third-hand luck. Every day was the same ritual: suit up, tether up, and cut, hoping to shear off a plate of neosteel or a salvageable power conduit worth enough to pay for the oxygen I was breathing. It wasn't a living. It was a slow-motion death, and I was long past caring. My name is Jax, and I was a ghost haunting a morgue the size of a solar system. The debt was a physical weight, a constant pressure in my chest from a man named Silas, a lone shark who ran the only real port in this sector, Station 73. He had my marker, and every cycle I came up short. The interest grew. Another chain wrapped around my ankles. It was Lena's debt. Really, hers and mine. We'd bought the stray dog together, dreaming of making one big score and buying a little plot of land on a terraformed moon with a breathable atmosphere and real, honest-to-God rain. But Lena was gone now, a ghost of a different sort. Her suit breached by a piece of shrapnel during a plasma storm 2 years back. I'd held her hand as the light in her eyes faded, her last breath fogging the inside of her helmet. Now all I had left of her was her half of the debt and a silence that was louder than any scream. That's why I was heading for the Veil. It was a section of the graveyard everyone knew to avoid, a swirling nebula of charged dust and unstable wreckage that scrambled sensors and ate ships whole. The authority had marked it as a hazardous containment zone, but the old-timers, the ones who'd been picking these bones since the war ended, they had other stories. They said something ancient slept in the Veil, something that wasn't from the war, and that it didn't like being disturbed. But desperation is a powerful fuel. I'd heard whispers of a wreck inside, a pre-war dreadnought called the Seraphim, rumored to have a core made of pure crystalline iridium. A score like that wouldn't just clear my debt. It would be enough to leave this life behind for good, to finally find a place where the silence wasn't so suffocating. The stray dog groaned as we pushed through the outer wisps of the nebula, the hull plating vibrating with a low, mournful hum. My console flickered, sensors struggling to cut through the interference. Static hissed in my ears. This was stupid. This was the kind of risk that had gotten Lena killed. But the image of her face, smiling in the dim light of the cockpit, was fading with every passing year, and the thought of losing that memory completely was more terrifying than any ghost in the Veil. I pushed deeper. The wreckage here was different. The familiar, angular shapes of corporate frigates and authority cruisers were replaced by something else, something older. The metal was twisted into impossible geometries, scarred by weapons I didn't recognize. And then I saw it. The Seraphim. It wasn't a ship. It was a cathedral of death. A metal mountain adrift in the cosmic dust. Its scale was obscene, dwarfing anything I'd ever scavenged. But it was broken. Its spine snapped in two. A gaping wound torn through its midsection. It was a dead Leviathan, and I was here to pick its teeth. I docked the stray dog near the breach, the magnetic clamps groaning as they fought against the ship's weak residual gravity. The air inside the Seraphim was stale, metallic, and colder than the void itself. My mag boots clanked on the deck as I moved through corridors wide enough to fly a shuttle through. Emergency lights flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on my eyes. The silence in here was different, heavier. It felt watchful. I made my way toward the engineering section, following faded schematics on my wrist-mounted datapad. The iridium core should have been shielded, sealed in a containment vessel the size of a house, but the ship was dark, its power long dead. The core would be cold, inert, and mine for the taking. I found the core chamber, but it wasn't what I expected. The containment vessel was shattered, ripped open from the inside. There was no iridium, just jagged shards of metal and a deep, unsettling darkness. My heart sank. It was all for nothing. Another dead end. As I turned to leave, a faint light caught my eye. It pulsed from deep within the mangled wreckage of the containment unit. A soft, violet glow that seemed to breathe. Curiosity, or maybe just the refusal to accept defeat, pulled me forward. I climbed through the wreckage, my suit's lamps cutting through the gloom, and found the source. It wasn't a piece of technology. It was a crystal, the size of my fist, suspended in a web of shimmering, filament-like wires that seemed to grow out of the metal around it. The crystal pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light, and as I got closer, I felt something else. A low thrum. Not a sound, but a vibration in my bones, in my teeth. It felt alive. I reached out, my gloved fingers hesitating just inches from its surface. This wasn't on any schematic. This wasn't human technology. As my fingertips brushed against the smooth, cool surface of the crystal, the universe fractured. It wasn't a blast or a shock. It was an implosion of the senses, a torrent of images, feelings, and raw data flooded my mind not as thoughts, but as pure experience. I saw star systems being born and dying in the blink of an eye. I felt the cold rage of a starship dying in battle. I heard a chorus of 1,000 voices singing a song that was also a blueprint for a fusion engine. My own memories intertwine with this alien flood, Lena's laugh, the greasy smell of Silas's office, the cold certainty of my own impending death. My nose started bleeding inside my helmet, the warm, coppery tang a stark anchor in the swirling chaos. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. I was on my knees, gasping for air that wasn't there, my head pounding as if it were about to split open. The crystal's light had intensified, its violet glow now casting sharp shadows across the ruined chamber. The low thrum was gone, replaced by a steady, quiet hum that seemed to emanate from my own suit. My biomonitor, which had been flashing red with proximity alerts, was now a steady, solid green. My oxygen levels were at 100%. My suit's minor energy fluctuations completely stabilized. That was impossible. I hadn't refilled in hours, and the suit's power cell was notoriously unreliable. I scrambled back, my mind reeling. What the hell was this thing? A tremor shook the entire dreadnought. A deep, groaning protest of stressed metal. The ship was coming apart. A massive piece of the ceiling broke loose, crashing down toward me. I didn't have time to think, only to react. But my body felt slow, sluggish. Then the crystal flared. The web of filaments around it detached from the wreckage and shot out, wrapping around my arm with a strange, cool touch. They weren't wires. They felt organic. A surge of energy, clean and powerful, flooded my suit. My limbs moved with a speed and precision that wasn't my own. I dove out of the way an instant before the debris crushed the spot where I'd been kneeling. I didn't escape unscathed. A jagged piece of metal sliced through my thigh, tearing the suit and my flesh. Pain, white-hot and blinding, shot up my leg. My helmet display screamed with decompression warnings. The air in my suit began to hiss out into the dead ship. This was it. This was how I died. Alone. Bleeding out in a tomb. For nothing. But the filaments on my arm tightened, and the crystal pulsed brightly. I felt a strange, cool sensation spread from my arm through my entire body, pushing back against the pain. On my display, the decompression alert flickered and died. A thin, iridescent film, like oil on water, was sealing the tear in my suit from the inside, hardening into a flexible, airtight patch. The crystal was fixing me, fixing my suit. The dreadnought groaned again, this time more violently. I had to get back to the stray dog. I grabbed the crystal, and the filaments retracted, pulling the strange object into my grasp. It was warm now, and it vibrated gently in my hand, like a captured bird. I limped back through the dying ship, my legs screaming in protest with every step. But the cold, analytical calm that had settled over me pushed me forward. When I reached the airlock, I saw that the collapsing dreadnought had damaged my ship. The docking clamp was sheared off, and the stray dog was drifting away, its engines dark. I was stranded. Panic, cold and familiar, began to rise in my throat. I was going to die out here, just like Lena. But the crystal pulsed in my hand, and an idea, fully formed and unnervingly logical, blossomed in my mind. It was a crazy, suicidal plan, one that involved using my suit's overcharged propulsion pack to bridge the gap and manually rerouting the stray dog's emergency power. It shouldn't have been possible. But as I leaped into the void, the crystal seemed to feed energy directly into my pack, giving me a controlled, powerful thrust I'd never been able to achieve before. I landed on the hull of my ship with a bone-jarring thud. Inside, the cockpit was dark and cold. The main reactor was offline. I crawled to the aft engineering bay, my leg leaving a trail of blood on the deck. I placed the crystal on the primary energy conduit, and the moment it made contact, the filaments shot out, weaving themselves into the ship's systems like veins. The lights flickered on. The engine hummed to life, not with its usual rattling cough, but with a smooth, powerful thrum that vibrated through the entire ship. The diagnostics on the main console lit up, all green. Fuel efficiency 120%, reactor output 150%. Systems I thought were permanently damaged were listed as optimal. The ship felt alive. It felt like the crystal had become its heart. A blip appeared on my long-range scanner. It was a single vessel, moving fast. Its trajectory aimed directly for the Veil. Its transponder signature was coded. Military grade. Authority patrol. No, this was different. The ship's profile was sleek, predatory, and black as the void itself. A regulator ship. They were the authority's boogeymen. Corporate-funded fanatics who enforced the rules in the outer sectors with lethal efficiency. They never came this deep into the graveyard. They weren't here for a salvage violation. They were here for the wreck of the Seraphim. They were here for the crystal. A hail came through. A sterile, synthesized voice that made the hairs on my neck stand up. Unidentified vessel. You are in a restricted sector in possession of a proscribed artifact. Power down your drives and prepare to be boarded. Non-compliance will be met with terminal force. They knew. They somehow knew what I had. I looked at the crystal, now fused with the heart of my ship, its violet light pulsing in time with the hum of the engine. I looked at the approaching regulator ship on the screen, a symbol of everything that had crushed me, that had taken Lena, that had left me to die in the silence. I could surrender. I could give them the crystal and beg for my life. They might even grant it. A lifetime in a penal colony being their version of mercy. But as the regulator ship closed the distance, its weapon ports glowing with malevolent energy, I felt something new course through me, something that pushed back the fear and the despair. It was the crystal. It was the ship, but it was also me. It was a cold, quiet rage that had been buried for years. I was not going to run. I was not going to die on my knees. I wrapped my hands around the controls, which now felt like an extension of my own body. An impossible maneuver, a flight path through the densest part of the wreckage, flashed in my mind a gift from my new, silent partner. The regulator ship fired, a lance of pure energy slicing through the space where I had been a second before. I banked the stray dog hard, diving into the metal labyrinth of the graveyard, the ship moving with a grace and power it had never possessed. The silence was still there, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't empty. Something was listening. And we were ready to fight back. The chase was a symphony of chaos conducted by a madman, or maybe not me. Maybe it was the crystal, the heart, humming in the core of my ship, singing its silent song of violence and escape into my mind. The stray dog, a ship that used to handle like a drunken barge, now moved like a striking viper. It wasn't me at the controls anymore, not entirely. My hands moved, my feet worked the thruster pedals, but the impulses came from somewhere else, a cold, clear stream of tactical data that flowed into my brain, showing me the weaknesses in the regulator's attack pattern, the exact moment to vent plasma to throw off their targeting locks, the precise trajectory needed to skim the decaying hull of a derelict cruiser and use it as a shield. The regulator ship, the Vigilance, was relentless. It was faster, better armed, and its pilot was clearly a professional, not some backwater scavenger, but it was predictable. It fought by the book, adhering to the rigid doctrines of the authority. It expected me to run in a straight line. It expected fear. It didn't expect a ship that could dance. They are adapting. A thought whispered in my head, a thought that was not my own. It was a calm, observational fragment from the chorus, the name I had started to give the presence within the crystal. The voice wasn't a voice, it was a pure concept, an injection of knowledge that felt as natural as a memory. The Vigilance stopped trying to outmaneuver me and started trying to outthink me, firing its ion cannons not at me, but at the wreckage ahead of me, creating a cascading field of magnetized debris that my ship was flying directly into. My human instincts screamed to pull up, to change course. The chorus held me steady. Maintain vector, it urged. And with the thought came the solution, a complex sequence of micro-adjustments to the shield harmonics, a precise burst from the portside maneuvering thrusters. I executed the commands on pure instinct. The stray dog shimmied, its hull groaning as we slipped through a gap in the debris field no wider than the ship itself. Metal shrieked on either side of the cockpit, and for a terrifying second, I was flying blind in a tunnel of rusting steel. Then we were through. Back in the relative open of the veil, A proximity alert screamed the Vigilance was right on our tail, its forward weapon ports glowing, ready to deliver the final blow. Now! The chorus commanded. I slammed a button on the console, one that hadn't worked in years. The rear cargo bay doors, the ones I used for hauling scrap, blew open. It wasn't empty. It was filled with the junk I'd collected over the past week. Unstable power cells, jagged sheets of plating, a whole deactivated mining drone. A cloud of worthless, deadly scrap flooded the space behind us. The regulator pilot, expecting a mine or a torpedo, was caught completely by surprise. The ship's point defense systems went wild, trying to target hundreds of individual pieces of junk at once. It was just enough of a distraction. I looped the stray dog around a massive, skeletal piece of a forgotten battleship and came out facing them. I had one weapon, a single forward-mounted plasma cannon that was prone to overheating. But it was a weapon the stray dog and the chorus now controlled with absolute precision, an energy spike, far beyond the cannon's normal limits, surged from the ship's core. The thought came clear as day. Target their bridge. I fired. A bolt of incandescent purple energy, the same color as the crystal's glow, lanced across the void. It wasn't a clean hit. Their shields absorbed most of the blast, but it was enough. The Vigilance's bridge flickered, and the ship listed to one side, its engines sputtering. We didn't wait to see more. I pushed the throttle, and the stray dog leaped forward, diving deeper into the veil's obscuring dust clouds, leaving the crippled hunter behind. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, we were alone. The adrenaline faded, leaving a deep, trembling exhaustion in its place. The pain in my leg, which had been a dull throb, returned with a vengeance. I slumped in the pilot's chair, my breath fogging the cold glass of the cockpit. We were safe, for now. But we were also trapped. The regulator would have sent a distress call, broadcast my location and description to every authority and regulator asset in the sector. The veil could hide me for a while, but I couldn't stay here forever. My fuel was low. My supplies were dwindling. And I was a dead man the second I showed my face at any civilized port. I looked down at my hand, still resting on the throttle. Thin, black lines, like veins, were spreading from beneath my glove, tracing a path up my wrist. I pulled the glove off. The lines were under my skin, branching out from my fingertips, glowing with a faint, violet light. They mirrored the filament-like wires of the crystal. It wasn't just in the ship. It was in me. Panic, sharp and cold, clawed at my throat. I tried to pull my hand away from the controls, but it was like trying to pull my own arm out of its socket. I was connected, fused to the ship in a way that went beyond the neural interface. I could feel the thrum of the engine in my own pulse, the energy flowing through the conduits like blood in my veins. "We are one," the chorus stated, not as a threat, but as a simple, undeniable fact. "You are the pilot. I am the heart. The ship is the body." I ripped my hand away with a surge of adrenaline, a tearing sensation echoing in my mind. The black lines faded but didn't disappear. I stumbled out of the cockpit, my leg protesting, and made my way to the small medbay. I peeled back the makeshift patch on my thigh. The wound was still there, a nasty gash, but it wasn't bleeding. The edges were clean, and the same iridescent film I'd seen on my suit was covering the exposed flesh, knitting it back together, cell by cell. The process was unnervingly fast. As I watched, another memory, not my own, surfaced. I saw a world of crystalline cities under a purple sun, inhabited by beings of pure light and energy. I felt their collective consciousness, a vast, peaceful ocean of thought. And I felt their terror as something dark and silent came from the void and shattered their world, breaking their unity into a million screaming fragments. The heart, was one of those fragments, a seed of a dead civilization, adrift for eons, waiting for a compatible host, a body to rebuild itself. That's what the Seraphim was, not a prison, but a cradle, an incubator designed to nurture the heart until it was ready. And I had stumbled in and become the catalyst. I was its new body. The thought should have terrified me, and it did. But underneath the fear was something else, a sense of purpose. For the first time since Lena died, the silence in my head wasn't empty. The chorus was there, ancient and alien, but not malevolent. It was a survivor, just like me. We were both broken pieces of something that used to be whole. The regulators called it a prescribed artifact. They hunted it with religious zeal. Why another fragment of knowledge surfaced? The regulators and the corporate authority they served built their power on control, on the purity of the signal, a rigid doctrine that dictated all technology must be derived from a single, sanctioned source. Anything else, anything alien or unpredictable, was considered a contamination, a heresy that threatened their absolute power. The heart was the ultimate heresy. It was technology that was alive, that could think, evolve, and bond with an organic being. It was a power they couldn't control, and so it had to be destroyed. I spent the next 3 days hidden in the core of the veil, letting my body and the ship heal. I learned to communicate with the chorus, not with words, but with intent. I thought of a destination, and it showed me the star charts, calculating the safest routes. I felt a pain in the ship's hull where the regulator's fire had scored it, and the heart diverted nano repair systems to mend the breach. We were becoming a single, symbiotic entity. But we couldn't hide forever. Our energy reserves were finite, even with the heart's incredible efficiency. We needed fuel, raw materials to complete the repairs, and most of all, we needed information. I needed to know who else was looking for me, how far the regulator's reach extended, and if there was any place in the galaxy I could go where they wouldn't follow. There was only one place that had that kind of information, a place I had sworn I would never return to, Station 73, the wretched hub of scum and villainy that Silas ran with an iron fist. It was the last place they'd expect me to go. It was suicide, but it was also my only option. Silas dealt in information as much as he dealt in debt and misery. His network was the dark underbelly of the corporate authority, a web of spies, smugglers, and data brokers. If anyone knew what the regulators were really after, it would be him. And I still had a marker with him, a massive debt that I now had no way of paying in standard credits. But maybe I could offer him something else, something far more valuable. A poor strategic choice, the chorus noted as I plotted the course. The probability of hostile engagement is 97.3%. Yeah, well, the probability of us starving to death in this nebula is 100%, I muttered, my voice hoarse. Sometimes you have to bet on the long shot. The chorus was silent for a moment, processing. Then, a new feeling flowed from it. Not just data, but something akin to agreement. an understanding of desperation. "We will need to modify our appearance," it suggested. "The stray dog is now a target. We must become a ghost." Over the next few hours, we transformed the ship. Using the scavenged materials in the cargo hold, the Heart directed the ship's repair drones with terrifying efficiency. They stripped off the most recognizable parts of the hull, replacing them with a patchwork of mismatched plating. They reconfigured the engine signature to mimic that of a common freighter. They even painted over the ship's name, leaving a blank. Anonymous Hull. By the time we were done, the stray dog was gone. In its place was a ship that looked like 1,000 other junk haulers plying the outer sectors forgettable, disposable, invisible. I even changed my own transponder code, linking it to the forged identity of a dead man I'd pulled from a wreck years ago. As we slipped out of the veil, I felt a pang of loss for the ship that had been my home for a decade. But it was a necessary death. We were something new now. Hunter and hunted. Pilot and heart. Man and machine. A ghost in the shell, heading back into the world that had tried to bury us. Ready to haunt the ones who held the chains. Station 73 loomed in the distance, a rusty, spinning monstrosity lit by gaudy neon signs and the cold, unforgiving light of a nearby pulsar. It looked the same as always, a predator waiting patiently for its next meal. This time, however, the prey was coming back with teeth. Station 73 didn't so much orbit its pulsar as endure it. The station was a monument to corrosion, a spiraling city of rust and regret, held together by force fields that flickered like dying embers. As we approached, the stray dog, or whatever it was now, slipped through the station's chaotic traffic with an unnatural ease. Every other ship fought for position, their pilots barking insults and threats over the open comms channel. We moved through the gaps they left behind, a silent predator in a school of frantic fish. The chorus absorbed the station's data streams, filtering the noise into a coherent picture. "Defensive systems are antiquated," it observed in my mind. "Power grid is unstable, fluctuating by 12%. Life support is operating at 68% efficiency. The population's primary emotional state is a mixture of anxiety and aggression. This environment is hostile." "It's home," I grunted, guiding us into a docking bay in the station's grimy underbelly, a place where no one asked for credentials as long as your docking fees were paid on time. The moment I stepped out of the airlock, the station's unique perfume hit me: recycled air, ozone from faulty wiring, cheap synthetic liquor, and the faint, coppery scent of old bloodstains. It was the smell of 1,000 desperate deals and 1,000,000 broken dreams. My leg was a dull ache, a constant reminder of the fight in the veil. Under the sleeve of my jacket, the black, glowing lines on my arm were a secret I couldn't afford to show. Kept my head down, my face hidden in the shadows of my hood, and joined the grimy river of humanity flowing through the station's main concourse. Scavengers, mercenaries, data miners, and refugees all jostled for space, their faces illuminated by the flickering holographic advertisements promising new lives on worlds they could never afford. No one gave me a second glance. I was just another piece of debris in the station's orbit. Silas's office was where it had always been, at the end of a dark corridor behind a bar called The Final Drop. The door wasn't guarded by muscle, it was guarded by a reputation. I placed my hand on the scanner, and after a moment's hesitation, it chimed and slid open. The room inside was surprisingly quiet and clean. The only light came from a dozen data screens displaying complex market trends, shipping manifests, and live surveillance feeds from all over the station. Silas sat behind a large, obsidian desk, not looking at the screens, but at a single, perfect white orchid in a small pot. He didn't look like a crime lord. He was a small, meticulously dressed man with thinning gray hair and the calm, patient eyes of a reptile. He didn't look up when I entered. "Jax," he said, his voice a dry rustle of paper. "I heard a rumor you were dead. A plasma storm in the graveyard. A shame. You still owed me a considerable sum." He finally lifted his gaze, and his eyes, cold and analytical, scanned me from head to toe. "You look unwell. The afterlife does not seem to agree with you." "I'm not dead," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the fear coiling in my gut. "And I'm here about the debt." Silas smiled, a thin, bloodless expression. "Excellent. I was just about to sell your marker to a corporate retrieval team. They pay well for salvage rights on defaulting accounts, especially the biological assets." He gestured to a chair. "Pay me, and we can forget this unfortunate rumor of your demise." I remained standing. "I don't have the credits." His smile didn't falter, but a coldness entered his eyes that made the void outside seem warm. "Then this will be a very short, and for you, a very final in conversation. I am a busy man." This was the moment, the pivot, the long shot. "I have something better than credits," I said. "Information, something you can't buy on your data screens." For the first time, I had his full attention. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Everyone in this station thinks their information is priceless. It rarely is. Impress me. Jax, before I have you spaced." "A regulator ship. The Vigilance," I began, my voice low and even. "It was disabled 2 days ago in the Vale. A single, heavily modified salvage vessel crippled its bridge and drive systems. The regulator is still out there, running on emergency power, trying to keep its mission log from being broadcast." Silas's mask of calm finally cracked. A flicker of genuine surprise crossed his face. He leaned forward. His eyes narrowed. "The authority has put the entire sector on lockdown. They're calling it a navigational hazard. No one is supposed to know about the Vigilance. How could you? I was the one flying the salvage vessel," I said. The silence in the room was absolute. Silas stared at me, truly seeing me for the first time, not as the pathetic, debt-ridden scavenger he knew, but as something new and dangerous. He typed a few commands into his terminal. A new screen lit up, displaying a classified authority bounty. My old ID photo was at the top. Underneath it were the words "erase and acquire." The payout was astronomical, enough to buy a small moon. "It seems your value has increased significantly," Silas mused, his voice regaining its composure. "This isn't a standard bounty. Jax, this is a black level order. They don't just want you dead. They want what you have. The prescribed artifact you recovered from the Seraphim. They want it badly." My blood ran cold. He knew. "What do you want, Silas?" I asked, cutting to the chase. "You could collect that bounty right now." "I could," he admitted, "but the authority pays well, while knowledge pays forever. They are acting out of fear, and fear creates opportunity. They are terrified of this artifact of yours. I want to know why. A weapon is just a weapon. But this has them dismantling their own command structure to keep it quiet. That suggests a paradigm shift. And I, my dear Jax, am in the business of profiting from such shifts. He stood up and walked to a window overlooking the station's glittering, chaotic sprawl. Your debt is an irrelevance. We are going to make a new arrangement. You are now a ghost. No name. No history. You work for me. You will be my agent in the shadows, my personal key to unlocking this mystery. In return, I will provide you with fuel, supplies, and most importantly, a cloak of invisibility through my network. No one will find you unless I wish it. It wasn't a choice. It was a new cage, but a bigger one. What's the first job? I asked. Find out what this artifact truly is. The authorities' fear is not rational. It's existential. This isn't about a new engine or a better gun. They believe this technology is a contamination, a plague that could unravel their entire empire of control. Your artifact, the heart as you seem to be thinking of it. He paused, letting the word hang in the air, and a cold dread washed over me. He could hear it. He could hear the chorus. Is a seed, and they are terrified of the tree it might grow into. You need to find out where the other seeds are. He returned to his desk and pushed a data chip across its surface. The Seraphim had a sister ship, the Archangel. It was a deep-range exploration vessel, outfitted with the same experimental core. It vanished a century ago in the Tartarus Rift, a sector even more dangerous than the Veil. The regulators are quietly diverting their most elite units there now. They are looking for it. You will get there first. I took the chip. And if I refuse, Silas smiled that cold, reptilian smile again. Then the bounty on your head will suddenly seem far too tempting to a man in my position. Don't disappoint me, Jax. The universe is a dangerous place for a ghost without a graveyard to haunt. I left his office, the data chip feeling heavy in my pocket. The deal was made. I was no longer a free man. If I ever had been, I was a tool. A weapon pointed in a direction of Silas's choosing. As I walked back through the crowded concourse, a strange sensation prickled at the edge of my consciousness. It was a flicker of resonance, a faint echo from the chorus in my mind. But it wasn't coming from me. It was like hearing a familiar note in a song played by a distant instrument. The chorus pulsed with a feeling I hadn't experienced from it before curiosity. Resonance detected. It thought, another heart. Close. My head snapped up, and I scanned the crowd. My eyes, enhanced by the symbiotic link with the heart, picked out details with crystalline clarity. And then I saw her, across the concourse, leaning against a support pillar, was a woman. She was wrapped in a drab, gray cloak, her face obscured by shadows. But that's not what caught my attention. It was her eyes. For a split second, she looked directly at me, and in the depths of her gaze, I saw a faint, unmistakable violet glow, a mirror of the light that now lived in me. A jolt, like a circuit completing, passed between us. It was a silent, instantaneous acknowledgement. She knew what I was. I knew what she was. Then, as quickly as she appeared, she turned and melted back into the crowd, vanishing like a phantom. I stood frozen, the noise and chaos of the station fading into a dull roar. The universe had just become infinitely larger and more terrifying. I was not the only one, and if the authority was hunting for one of us, they were hunting for all of us. The encounter left a phantom limb in my mind, an echo of a connection I hadn't known was possible. The chorus, which had been a solitary voice in my head, now felt like one half of a conversation that had been abruptly cut short. It pulsed with a complex mix of emotions. I was beginning to learn how to interpret the analytical curiosity of a scientist, the longing of a lost sibling, and a deep, instinctual wariness. The other is a wild variable. It communicated, the thought laced with a static of caution. Its energy signature is unstable, damaged, or maybe just different. I thought, maybe less broken. I didn't have time to dwell on it. Silas's clock was ticking, and the Tartarus Rift was not a place you entered unprepared. I returned to the ship, the data chip from Silas clutched in my hand, plugging it into the console. I watched as the information unfurled. It was more than just coordinates. It was a treasure trove of classified authority intel, schematics of regulator patrol routes, their communication frequencies, even the psychological profiles of their regional commanders. Silas had not been exaggerating. His network was a shadow empire. He had given me a sword, but the hilt was still firmly in his hand. The Tartarus Rift. The name alone was enough to make seasoned pilots jettison their cargo and run. It was a cosmic graveyard where a cluster of neutron stars had collapsed, tearing the fabric of space-time into a chaotic tapestry of gravitational anomalies and temporal distortions. Ships that entered the rift didn't just get destroyed, they got erased from history, their matter scattered across dimensions. Flying into it was like trying to navigate a hurricane made of pure physics. Conventional navigation will fail, the chorus stated flatly as it analyzed the star charts. Temporal tides will render our sensor data obsolete nanoseconds after it is gathered. Got any bright ideas? I asked, my fingers tracing the terrifying, swirling vortex on the holographic map. We will not navigate, the chorus replied, a novel solution blooming in my consciousness. We will surf. The concept was elegant and utterly insane. We wouldn't fight the rift's currents. We would ride them. The chorus could read the subtle gravitational waves, the precursor ripples of a temporal shear, and adjust our ship's mass and energy signature in real time, allowing us to be pulled along the path of least resistance. It would be like being a leaf in a storm, trusting the wind not to tear you apart. For the next 2 days, we prepared. I used Silas's untraceable credit line to purchase raw materials from the station's black market exotic alloys, stabilized plasma, and a crystalline focusing lens that cost more than my old ship. The chorus guided me, providing blueprints for modifications that shouldn't have been possible on a vessel this size. We didn't just repair the stray dog, we rebuilt it from the inside out. The ship's internal structure was reinforced with the new alloys. Its power conduits were relined to handle the heart's immense energy output, and the new lens was integrated into the forward plasma cannon, turning it into a precision instrument capable of firing a beam so focused it could, in theory, slice through the hull of a capital ship. The black, vein-like lines on my skin had spread further, now reaching my shoulder. The symbiosis was deepening. I no longer felt like a man in a machine. I felt like the nerve endings of a much larger being. My own physical needs were fading. I barely slept. And when I ate, the food tasted like ash. The only thing that felt real was the thrum of the heart, the flow of data from the chorus, and the singular purpose of our mission. As we slipped away from Station 73 and made the jump to the edge of the rift, a priority alert flashed on my console. It was from Silas's network, A regulator fleet, led by a newly commissioned dreadnought, the Inexorable, had just been rerouted. Its destination, the Tartarus Rift. They were coming for the Archangel, and they were coming in force. "They know," I whispered. "The timetable has been accelerated." The chorus confirmed. Probability of direct confrontation has increased to 99.8%. We had lost our head start. It was now a race. We reached the edge of the rift, a visible wound in the cosmos. Space itself seemed to bend and break here, stars twisting into smeared lines of light. With a final surge of power, we plunged in. The universe dissolved into a kaleidoscope of madness. Gravity shifted 100 times a second, pulling the ship in every direction at once. The view screen was a nauseating swirl of color and light. My human senses were useless, overwhelmed. I closed my eyes and let the chorus take over. I became a passenger in my own body as the heart took direct control of the ship. My hands moved with blinding speed across the console, not as a pilot, but as a physical component of a living computer. We dove and weaved, our hull groaning under the impossible strain. Time itself became fluid. I saw glimpses of our own wake, a ghostly afterimage of where we had been a moment before. I saw nebulae that wouldn't be born for 1,000,000 years, and the dying light of suns that had gone cold before humanity ever left Earth. At the heart of the chaos, the chorus was an anchor of pure logic. It sang its song of physics into the storm, and the storm bent to its will. Then, through the temporal noise, we felt it. A pulse, a faint, rhythmic beat, like a distant drum. It was another heart, the Archangel. It was still alive. We followed the signal, riding a particularly violent gravity wave that propelled us deep into the rift's core. And there it was. The Archangel was not a wreck. It was encased in a perfect sphere of crystallized space-time, a shimmering bubble that held it in a state of perfect preservation, frozen at the exact moment of the cataclysm that had created the rift. It was a ship in a bottle, and the bottle was the universe itself. But we weren't alone. Positioned around the crystal sphere were 3 regulator stealth frigates, their black hulls barely visible against the void. They were using a network of gravimetric emitters to try and carefully pry the Archangel from its temporal prison. Above them, a larger ship was materializing, phasing into reality as it exited a subspace jump. The Inexorable. It was a monster, a flying fortress of black metal and righteous fury, its hull bristling with enough firepower to pacify a star system. "They have not detected us," the chorus noted. "Our chaotic entry had masked our energy signature. Their gravimetric field is interfering with their own sensors." We had the element of surprise. But it wouldn't last. "What's the plan?" I asked, my own mind feeling slow and clumsy compared to the lightning-fast calculations of the chorus. "Direct assault is statistically impossible," it replied. "The Inexorable alone represents a terminal threat. Therefore, we must change the variables." A plan, audacious and suicidal, formed in my mind. A perfect fusion of my own desperate cunning and the chorus's alien logic. We couldn't fight the regulators, but maybe we could fight the rift itself. The chorus identified a key weakness in the regulator's setup: their gravimetric emitters. The very tools they were using to extract the Archangel had to be perfectly synchronized. If one of them was disrupted, the entire field would collapse, and the backlash of temporal energy would be catastrophic. Our target was the emitter furthest from the inexorable. We moved in, silent and dark, a ghost slipping through their net. We were almost in position when a new signal appeared on my screen. A single, small ship, a smuggler-class freighter, was decloaking on the far side of the crystal sphere. It was the woman from Station 73. "The wild variable," the chorus stated. What the hell was she doing here? She wasn't running or hiding. She was positioning herself, as if she were waiting for something. A warning blared through my console. We'd been spotted. One of the stealth frigates was turning to intercept us. There was no more time for subtlety. "Do it," I commanded. I aimed our modified plasma cannon at the targeted emitter and fired. A beam of pure, violet energy, focused to a razor's edge, shot across the void. It struck the emitter's power core, and the device exploded in a silent, brilliant flash. The effect was instantaneous and far more violent than I could have imagined. The synchronized gravimetric field collapsed. A wave of raw temporal energy, released from its cage, erupted from the crystal sphere. The universe screamed. The 3 stealth frigates were obliterated, their atoms scattered across millennia. The inexorable was hit by the full force of the wave. Its formidable shields flickered and died, its hull buckling as decades of time washed over it in a single second. It aged, corroded, and fell apart before my eyes, turning from a state-of-the-art warship into a derelict ghost. We were caught in the shockwave, and the ship was thrown backwards, systems failing, the heart itself letting out a silent shriek of pain in my mind. Through the chaos, I saw the woman's ship. It hadn't been destroyed. It had moved an instant before the blast, as if she knew it was coming. She swooped in, her ship's tractor beam locking onto the Archangel's crystal prison, which was now free. With impossible power, she began to pull it away, rescuing it from the heart of the dying rift. A voice, clear and human, crickled over my comms for the first time. It was her. "You took a big risk, Scavenger," she said, her voice calm and steady, with an undercurrent of something that might have been amusement. "You have their attention now. All of it." The inexorable was a wreck, but it wasn't dead. Its backup systems were coming online. Weapon ports were opening along its decaying hull. "Who are you?" I demanded, fighting to keep our own ship from tearing itself apart. "A friend," she replied. Or maybe just someone who doesn't like the authorities' definition of purity. "The name's Kalen, and you and I have a lot to talk about. Get your ship under control and follow me. The real fight is just getting started." She cut the comms, and her ship, towing its impossible prize, jumped to subspace, vanishing in a flash of light. We were alone, battered and broken, with the dying wreck of the most powerful ship in the regulator fleet, preparing to unleash hell upon us. The race was over. The war had just begun. The inexorable died the way it had lived, with cold, implacable violence. Its death throes were a storm of uncontrolled energy pulses and blind, furious volleys from its remaining weapon systems. We were a wounded fish in a shark's death roll, and survival was measured in seconds. The chorus was a faint whisper in my mind. Its energy reserves nearly depleted from the temporal shockwave. For the first time since the Veil, I was truly on my own, and the terror was a cold, sharp blade in my gut. But beneath the terror was the training, the instincts the chorus had drilled into me. I pushed the ship, our ship, through a sequence of maneuvers that were pure, desperate improvisation. We vented the last of our plasma from the port side to kick the ship into a wild spin, dodging a salvo of torpedoes. I rerouted the last dregs of auxiliary power to the forward shields, absorbing a glancing blow from a plasma beam that would have otherwise vaporized us. The ship screamed, metal groaning, every alarm blaring in a chorus of its own, a symphony of imminent death. We limped out of the Tartarus Rift, trailing debris and frozen atmosphere, and emerged into the stunning, silent clarity of normal space. The inexorable was a fading memory, a new ghost for a haunted sector. Kaylin was waiting for us, her ship a dark sliver against the starfield. Docked alongside her was the impossible prize, the temporal sphere containing the Archangel. She guided us to a rendezvous point in the shadow of a rogue moon, a dead rock that appeared on no official charts. As our airlocks hissed open and I stepped into the corridor connecting our ships, she was there, up close. The violet light in her eyes was more pronounced, a swirling nebula in miniature. The lines on her skin were different from mine, more intricate, like a circuit board drawn by a master calligrapher. "You're a mess," she said, her voice devoid of pity, replaced by a pragmatism that was both unnerving and comforting. "The symbiosis is crude, forced. Your heart was in shock when you found it. It latched onto you out of pure survival instinct. And yours?" I asked, my voice a ragged whisper. "I was a xenolinguist for the Authority," she explained, leading me onto the bridge of her ship. It was cleaner, more advanced than the stray dog had ever been. My team discovered the first heart, the one that's now part of me, on a dead world a decade ago. We were supposed to study it, catalog it, but I felt it calling. While my superiors saw a potential weapon, I saw a consciousness. I bonded with it. The regulators came to purify the discovery. I was the only one who escaped. The pieces began to click into place. The authorities' fear, the regulators' fanaticism. "They're not just trying to destroy a weapon," I said. "This is a religion to them." "Worse," Kaylin corrected. "It's a cover-up. The authorities' entire power structure, their purity of the signal, is built on a lie. The signal they worship and control isn't a human invention. It's a pale imitation, a corrupted echo of the network our hearts came from. An entire civilization of beings, the ones I call the architects, transcended this physical reality. They didn't die. They became the network itself, a substrate of consciousness woven into the fabric of space-time. The hearts are the keys, the terminals that can access it." My mind reeled. The chorus pulsed in agreement, feeding me images of a vast, silent web of light connecting everything. "So the Authority are gatekeepers," she finished, terrified that someone else will find the real keys and expose their god for the cheap copy it is. If the galaxy knew that true transcendence, true connection, was possible, the Authority's empire of control would crumble overnight. She looked at me, her violet eyes intense. "That's why we're going to burn it to the ground. The heart in the Archangel is different. It's a master node, a root key. With it, we can do more than just listen to the network. We can broadcast." Before I could process the sheer scale of her plan, a shrill alert cut through the bridge. A secure message piped through Silas's hidden network. My blood ran cold as I read the text. It was a fragment of a high-level regulator communique. They knew about the inexorable. They knew 2 contaminated vessels had escaped, and they knew our likely destination. Silas was playing both sides. He hadn't just given me information, he'd put a tracker on me, a leash to follow my progress. He was selling my location to the highest bidder. The message ended with a set of coordinates. Station 73. He's calling them home, I said, a bitter anger rising in my throat. He's setting a trap, using us as the bait to lure the regulators in so he can seize the Archangel in the chaos. Kalen's expression hardened. Then we will not disappoint him. We will spring his trap, but we'll be the ones who walk away. Our journey back to Station 73 was a blur of frantic preparation. Kalen's heart and the chorus worked in concert. A silent, lightning-fast exchange of data. They guided us in modifying both our ships, weaving their systems together. Our two vessels, the junk hauler and the sleek scout, became one weapon system. Kalen's plan was simple and suicidal. We would allow the regulators to corner us at the station while they engaged us. Kalen would board the station and release the Archangel's heart from its temporal prison. My job was to hold off an entire regulator fleet long enough for her to succeed. We arrived to find a war party waiting. A dozen regulator frigates formed a blockade around Station 73, their black hulls a stark promise of death. As we approached, they hailed us. The voice of the new high regulator, cold and absolute. Contamination confirmed. You are the last vestiges of a failed paradigm. Surrender the artifacts and be granted the mercy of a clean erasure. The offer is declined. I broadcast back, the words my own, but the resolve a gift from the chorus. And then the universe erupted in fire. Our two ships fought as one. Kalen was a master pilot, her ship a scalpel, while mine, infused with the raw power of my heart, was a sledgehammer. We moved through their formations like a ghost. Our combined energy signatures confusing their targeting systems. Beams of light sliced through the space we had just occupied. We answered with focused blasts of plasma, crippling their engines, shattering their shields. But there were too many of them. Our hulls bled. Our shields buckled. Inside the station, I knew Kalen was fighting her own battle, heading for the docking bay, where Silas would be waiting to claim his prize. A massive energy spike flared from the station's core. Silas had sprung his trap. A station-wide energy field erupted, disabling every ship in the vicinity, including the regulators. It was a bold move, designed to leave both sides helpless while his own forces seized the Archangel. But he had underestimated the hearts. Our ships shuddered, our conventional systems dying. But the hearts kept our core functions alive. A pulse of alien life in a sea of dead machines. On my screen, I saw Kalen, now inside the station, release the Archangel's heart. It wasn't a crystal like ours. It was a sphere of pure, liquid light that pulsed with unimaginable power. The high regulator, his ship disabled, but his fanaticism intact, saw his prize being claimed. If we cannot contain the heresy, he broadcast across all channels, his voice a distorted shriek of rage. Then we will cleanse it, fire the purification charge. A single, massive torpedo launched from his flagship, moving slowly, unstoppably, toward the station. It wasn't designed to destroy ships. It was designed to sterilize a planet. This was it, the end of the game. Jax, it's time. Kalen's voice echoed in my head, not over the comms, but through the network. Connect with me. Become the broadcast. I closed my eyes. I let go of the fear, the anger, the last vestiges of the broken man I had been. I reached out with my mind, past the humming core of my own ship, and found her. Our two hearts touched, and the universe opened up. We plunged into the Architect's network, no longer as listeners, but as a voice. Together, we became a conduit for the Archangel's heart. It didn't release an energy wave or a weapon. It released the truth, a single, silent, instantaneous broadcast that touched every sentient mind in the sector. They saw the Architect's transcendence. They saw the lie of the authority's purity. They saw the vast, beautiful, interconnected reality they had been denied. They saw everything. The purification torpedo stopped a meter from the station's hull, disarmed by its own launch crew. The regulator ships went dark, not disabled, but silent. Their crews suddenly faced with a truth that shattered their faith. Inside the station, Silas, who had been about to seize the heart, screamed as the full, unfiltered truth of the universe flooded his mind. A mind built only for profit and control. It was too much. He collapsed, a husk left behind by a revelation he could not comprehend. When I opened my eyes, the battle was over. The regulator fleet was adrift, its war a casualty of understanding. Station 73 was intact. The silence that returned was not the empty, suffocating void I had known my entire life. It was a new silence, filled with the faint, distant hum of a million minds awakening to a new reality. The black lines on my arm now covered my entire body, a latticework of living light. I was no longer Jax, the scavenger. The chorus was no longer a voice in my head. We were one, a new consciousness in a new universe. Kaylin's ship drifted alongside mine. On the view screen, her face appeared, and for the first time, she was smiling. "It's a beginning," she said. I looked out at the starfield, no longer a graveyard of dead ships, but a garden of infinite possibility. The authority wouldn't fall in a day, but we had planted a seed of truth that would grow to shatter their empire of lies. We were no longer ghosts, hiding in the dark. We were the shepherds of a new dawn. "The silence is gone," I said, and as our ships turned toward the newly awakened galaxy, I knew we were finally home.